Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to head down to Germany once again. We're going to go to the state of Bavaria and the city of Munich, and since it's October 2020 we're going to have a look at one of the Oktoberfest beers today. And it just so happens that this is the last of the Oktoberfest beers from the original Munich 6 that I need to review for you here on the channel. And it was kind of strange because I just stumbled across this beer in De Bierwinkel in Leiden in the Netherlands, and I was quite happy that I managed to find it actually. So I thought, need to take this opportunity and get this one reviewed for you. So I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this beer. For this review then, we are going to go to Hacker-Pschorr Bräu, who are part of the Paulaner group these days, and we're having a taste of the Oktoberfest Märzen today. So this one comes in at 5.8% ABV, and I'm curious to see whether this one is going to be one of these kind of Helles Fest beer type things, or whether it will be a proper kind of Märzen actually. So yeah, not sure exactly what to expect from this one, but like I said, this is the last of the Oktoberfest beers from the original Munich 6 that I have to review. I've reviewed a couple of beers from Hacker-Pschorr before. I've had the Munich Helles, I've had the Dunkel, and also the Animator Doppelbock as well. So definitely cool to add this one to the Hacker-Pschorr reviews here on the channel, and I think we've got to have a look at the Pils and the Weizen at some point as well. So we'll see how we can get a hold of those, but I have to say Hacker-Pschorr are probably the most difficult of the original Munich 6 breweries for me to find here in Sweden actually, and I'm not sure what the reason for that is. I don't even see these guys over in Copenhagen all that much. So yeah, I will try and review the other ones from Hacker-Pschorr the next time I get the opportunity. I'll keep an eye on the web shops and stuff and maybe do a German order at some stage. But yeah, definitely nice to feature Hacker-Pschorr here once again on the channel, and like I said, I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this beer as well, and definitely cool to have this one for you during October of Oktoberfest. But obviously this year in 2020 it's been cancelled due to the whole COVID-19 situation, so that's just how it goes. But anyway, as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Hacker-Pschorr Bräu before, and hopefully we can add some more to that in the near future. As I said, there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel of course has a geography based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the German beers that I've reviewed for you. That's being added to whenever I get the opportunity, but not as regularly as I would like. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Hacker-Pschorr Bräu then, on to my brewery notes. So the history of this brewery goes back to the year 1417, when there's the first mention of the Hacker-Brauerei located on the corner of Sendlinger and Hackstrasse in Munich. So the site today is home to the Ältest Hacker House, which is one of the numerous Hacker-Pschorr brew pubs. But in 1792, brewery servant Josef Pschorr married Maria Theresa Hacker, who was the daughter of the brewmaster Peter Paul Hacker, and he later acquired his father-in-law's house and brewery, and over the next 15 years he worked hard and transformed the small Hacker-Brauerei into one of the top breweries amongst the other 50 that were operating in Munich at the time. A bit later on, in 1813, he commissioned the building of the Hacker Beer Fortress, which was the largest storage cellar in Germany at the time, with an area of 43,000 square feet and a capacity of 30,000 barrels, and it was also at a depth of 12 metres. Remember, at this time there wasn't artificial refrigeration. This is why most of the breweries in Germany had their own cellars. But despite the heavy investments required for the construction of the beer fortress, Josef Pschorr also managed to purchase the Bauerhansel Brauerei and the other buildings on Neuhauserstrasse to build the Pschorr Brauerei in 1820. So yeah, lots of stuff going on here. But unfortunately he died in 1841, but he left the brewery to his two sons, Georg Senior and Matthias Pschorr Senior, and then Georg took over the running of the Pschorr Brauerei, whereas Matthias took control of the Hacker Brauerei. But both breweries continued to operate independently, but they were in close proximity to each other and also to the beer fortress as well. But both brothers constructed state-of-the-art breweries for their respective companies, and they benefited from the connection to the rail network, which allowed them to distribute their beers both throughout Germany and further afield throughout the world. In 1864 though, Franz Strauss, as a kind of side note to all the history history of this brewery. In 1864, Franz Strauss and Josephine Strauss gave birth to Munich's most famous composer, Richard Strauss, and so Georg Pschorr Sr. was actually Richard Strauss's godfather, and he financially supported Richard at various points during his career. And to express his thanks for this, Richard dedicated Der Rosenkavalier to, or Der Rosenkavalier, I guess we would pronounce it in German, to his dear relatives, the Pschorr family, in his music. So yeah, one of Richard Strauss's most famous songs is dedicated to Georg Strauss, who was one of the main men behind the Hacker-Pschorr Bräu, which is pretty cool. But the brewery continued to grow very strongly, and they were aided by the invention of the artificial ice machine from Carl von Lindel, and they'd been using natural ice apparently since 1823, and this made it difficult for them to maintain the constant temperature in the beer fortress. As I've told you in other videos before, when it comes to lager beers, you do need to maintain a temperature of around 10 to 12 degrees to make these styles of beer. So yeah, it's quite it would have been quite difficult in the days before they had artificial refrigeration. But later on in 1864, Georg Pschorr Jr. took over the running of the Pschorr Bräu, and then he initiated a nearly 21-year period of reconstruction. And during this time, he realised his dream of building a new large brewery with the most advanced equipment available. But the building was based on modern engineering knowledge, and it was built on the circular grounds of the summer cellar in Bayerstrasse. And the Pschorr family was now the Pschorr brewery was now an industrial company with an annual output that tripled over the course of the move from the Neuhausstrasse to Bayerstrasse. And during this time, the Pschorr Brewery actually won a medal at the 1876 World Fair over in Philadelphia in America. So yeah, they were getting their name out there and becoming well known internationally. But both the Hacker-Pschorr Bräu had their troubles from the turn of the 20th century, but they managed to survive the First World War, the hyperinflation period in Germany in the late 20s, and the Nazi regime, and also the Second World War as well. In the aftermath of the war, though, the breweries had to share facilities due to the damage from Allied bombing raids over Munich, and the push to export their beer did continue, and they continued to strengthen the companies after that as well. But in 1972, economic and physical changes to the beer market led to an agreement to merge the two breweries, and thus they became known as Hacker-Pschorr Bräu Aktiengesellschaft. And then there was this basically surmounted to, I guess you could say, a reunification of these two traditional brewing companies in Munich, who had always been linked by their founding father, if you like. But the beers were still sold as separate brands until 1975, when they began to be sold under the Hacker-Pschorr Bräu brand, and then in 1979 the brewery changed hands and it was bought by Munich businessman Josef Schorgruber. He still owns the brewery today, but they are also now part of the Paulaner Group. So they've been part of the Paulaner Group for the last 41 years actually. But all of the beer is brewed in accordance with the Reinheitsgebot of 1516, so you know, only water, malt, hops and yeast in the beer, and these guys are one of the 6 breweries within the Munich city limits that are permitted to brew the famous Oktoberfest beer. But the event is actually held on land that was donated by Josef Pschorr to the state, which is kind of interesting too. So yeah, Hacker-Pschorr do have a lot of connections to the whole Oktoberfest thing as well, which is very cool. But yeah, the whole origin of Oktoberfest was that it was one of the crown princes got married to the future queen of Bavaria, so the king at the time decided he was going to have a big party to celebrate this marriage. He invited all the citizens, and then it just continued year on year after that actually. That was just kind of how it went. So that was the birth of Oktoberfest actually, and originally the beers were Märzen, so they were quite strong lager beers, but from what I understand over the last, in recent times, they've changed them to be more of a kind of Hellest Fest beer type thing, and I don't know if it was just because people were getting too drunk or exactly what it was, but yeah, the beers now are more kind of Hellest Fest beer type things rather than the original Oktoberfest Märzens that they used to be. But a lot of the breweries do sell the beers under the name Oktoberfest Märzen still, from what I've seen. But yeah, that's all I can really tell you about the Hacker-Pschorr Bräu for the moment. That is a little bit of a longer history of the Oktoberfest for you, but I think it is quite interesting. It is quite interesting to learn about the Hacker-Pschorr Bräu. These guys have got a very interesting history. Two very historic breweries linking together once again, having had a link with their founding father many years ago. So yeah, like I said, that's all I can really tell you about Hacker-Pschorr Bräu for the moment. Part of the Paulaner Group these days, but if you want to learn more about the brewery, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can of course check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn more about all the different beers that these guys have done. And this is review number 4 that I've done from these guys as well. So yeah, let's have a little look at this one then and see how we go. I'm very curious to see what this one has in store for us. But there you can see one of the very nicely dressed Munich beer girls there on the horse. Right through you can see the symbols of the Hacker-Pschorr breweries up on the top there, and of course combined they are now the Hacker-Pschorr Bräu. You can see the lovely little top label on this, which is quite traditional with these German beers, and you can see there is the famous kind of pop top. I think this is the only one of the 6 Oktoberfest beers that is a pop top, but from what I gather, I think this pop top is only used for the export ones now. I saw that there is a different label for this. It's sold in one of the kind of more stubby sort of Augustiner type bottles, I think, in Germany from what I've seen. So yeah, let me know about that in the comment section below. I'd be curious to know why they have a different version for the export and why there is a different one sold domestically, because from what I remember, all of the Hacker-Pschorr beers had this pop top. So I'm not sure if it is just a thing that recently Hacker-Pschorr have converted to using normal bottle tops now, but it would be a bit of a shame if they did, because this was always one of the things that kind of distinguished Hacker-Pschorr a little bit. But yeah, should be pretty good here. It says on the back here that this one is basically it's a Märzen beer brewed under the sky of the Bayerische sky, if you like. Yeah, it talks about it having some honey tastes and stuff like this, but that's of course what we want to do during the tasting video itself. But yeah, 5.8% Märzen this one. I'm curious to see how Märzen-like it is, or if it is going to be a little bit more of a kind of fest beer. But without further ado, let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting. And another thing to point out about this is that you can see on the back, this one has the European symbol for Munich beer. Of course, there's many different things throughout the European Union are territorially protected, such as Münchner beer, I think Bayerische beer, French champagne, Scotch whisky was one until recently, of course. But yeah, without further ado then, let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting. This is a half-litre bottle, of course. Oh, there we go. Alright, and yeah. You can see I was wondering why that didn't just pop right away when I pushed it, but there we go. But yeah, let's get this guy out and into the glass then. Curious to see what this has in store for us. Yeah, this one actually does look as if it is an original Märzen. So yeah, the story behind the Märzen beer style. Originally it was banned brewing beer, I believe, from April until through to September, if you like. So the reason for that was that the temperature in the summer, it was very difficult for them to maintain the lagering temperatures, of course, for these beers at the time. And so you could only brew beers between over the kind of essentially the winter and spring months, if you like, and the very late autumn. And you know, so the Märzen beer, they brewed it in March, hence the name März. Mars in German is March, of course. So they brewed a beer in March that was a bit stronger. They put it in the cellar and let it kind of you know, let it keep maturing until October. Then they released this kind of stronger, more highly alcoholic, more hoppy beer in October, and that was what became the Märzen style of beer. But it is a lager, actually. It is a lager. It's a cold fermentation beer, this one, a bottom fermenting beer. So yeah, pretty cool. But as you can see with this one, and as you would expect from a Märzen, I'm pretty sure going by the colour, this one is a Märzen rather than one of these fest beers that some of the other breweries do. But you can see that this beer has poured a lovely, nice, this one's a nice kind of coppery colour actually. You can see there's about you can see that there is a, what would we say, I'd say there's about a third finger of a frothy, kind of cream coloured head on this one. It's not perfect white, of course, but that's going to fade away to be a very, very thin foamy layer. The beer itself is crystal clear, so it's obviously been filtered, but yeah, a nice sort of coppery colour, this one, I have to say. So looks very, very nice, this, and you can see it's in my lovely Pilsner Urquell glass. This is the only kind of beer stein that I have at the moment, but I really like this glass actually. It's a very nice one to drink these lager beers out of. But yeah, 5.8% Märzen beer. Nothing particularly surprising about this beer in terms of its appearance. The head actually seems to be retaining fairly well, and that's what you want. The Germans do like a good head on their beer. But yeah, let's have a closer look at the aroma of this one then and just see how we get on. I'm very curious about this, I have to say. Oh yeah, very classic, very, very classic and typical for the style. So yeah, the aroma of this one is kind of what you'd expect. Straight away you get that lovely German breadiness out of the beer. The Munich malts, of course, are famed for their breadiness, and that's something that I really do miss about living in Heidelberg, was the German bakeries. The bread that you get in Germany is top class. I loved it. I miss the German food as well, the schnitzels and the sausages. Love it. Bit of Dunkel beer to go with it's always awesome. But yeah, straight away with this beer you can smell that lovely white bready, bread crusty base just forming the backbone of the beer. You do get a few more grainy elements out of it as you smell the beer, but there's also a little bit of brown sugar coming out of this one. So for me there is a wee touch of a sweet caramel in there, but it comes across as quite biscuity, you know, McVitie's digestive biscuity. So yeah, I mean the thing with these Märzens is they're not the most complex beers in terms of their aroma, but they just come across really nicely and they're very, very attractive actually. So yeah, just bear that in mind when you're trying these beers. The lager beers are done for drinkability. They're supposed to be nice, drinkable beers, and when you try these beers brewed by, you know, American and foreign breweries and stuff like that, you want them to match the original German versions. But yeah, the aroma of this one is very, very nice. It's got a lovely kind of bready backbone to it. You get a bit of that sweeter bread crusty note to it, which is what you expect of the Märzen. You do expect just a little touch of brown bread to those rather than the straight up white bread that you would normally get from a Helles. But yeah, a little bit of sweet caramel in there, a little bit of a kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity thing, and I get one or two little woody undertones to the beer as well. But the bready backbone of this beer is exactly what you would expect of a Märzen. I do find this one a little bit more smooth and bready than some of the other Märzens I've come across recently, but there's nothing wrong with that. You're always going to get different little nuances when you go from brewery to brewery, so nothing wrong with that. But yeah, on the hoppy side of things, again, it's kind of what you'd expect from the, you know, Hallertauer Tettnanger hops. These German noble hops have a very distinctive aroma, so you get that lovely little bit of smooth earthiness out of it at the back of the nose. You can smell some of that nice sort of floral aromaticity out of the beer. I don't think the floral note is too prominent in this one though. I think this beer does have a little bit of a herbal character from the hops too, which is quite interesting, but a very smooth, quite aromatic herbal character. And then at the time, I think this beer, on the green side of the hops, it really leans towards the grassier end of the spectrum for me. Yeah, I would say that. This beer is quite grassy in terms of the green side of the hops, so it's got to be Hallertauer or Tettnanger hops that are in this, I would say. But yeah, it comes across very, very nicely in terms of its aroma. It's one of the things that's always very admirable about the German, about these big German breweries, is that they can brew beer so consistently and to such high quality as well. You know, the German beers, in terms of quality control, the German breweries, I think, are second to none. You know, quality control in Germany is just top class. But yeah, the aroma of this beer on the hoppy side of things is very, very nice. That typical German noble hoppy character to it. But I do find this one, there's a little bit more herbal smoothness to this than I remember from some of the other Märzen beers. But yeah, in terms of the fruity side of the beer then, again it's kind of what you expect. For me, I get a little tiny touch of a figgy note out of this one, but that's not too prominent. You get a lot of appley and peary esters out of this too, so for me it's just got a little touch of a red fruity figgy kind of thing. There's a nice little bit of a kind of oily pear, and there is a wee touch of an appley note to it as well, and you get a little bit of zestiness on the you do get a little bit of zestiness on the grassy side of the beer as well. You get a little bit of that lemony, grassy kind of thing. But yeah, the aroma of this beer is very, very nice. It's very inviting. I think we've covered it in as much detail as we need to, so let's have a taste of this beer and see how we get on. Pretty sure this beer is a Märzen rather than one of these kind of lighter fest beers that you sometimes get. But yeah, this one is the Oktoberfest Märzen, coming in at 5.8% ABV from Hacker-Pschorr Bräu, part of the Paulaner Group in Munich, one of the famous 6 Oktoberfest beers from the Munich 6 breweries. So let's have a taste of this one then and see how it goes. Definitely nice to review the last of the original Munich 6 Oktoberfest beers for you here on the channel as well. So let's get stuck into this one. Slange, Skål, Prost, and hopefully next year in 2021 Oktoberfest can go ahead as normal. I need to go to it one year as well. Slange, Skål, cheers, Prost. Yeah, it's really, really nice. I mean, as I've told you before, I'm a huge fan of these traditional German beers. My friend Peter over at the Clueless Drinker he is as well. There's some really good German beer tubers as well, like Probier.tv and things like that as well. He's got some really interesting reviews. My German isn't quite good enough to understand all of them, need to work on that in the future, but yeah, you know, I love my traditional German beers actually. I love reviewing these for you here on the channel. But yeah, these lager beers are special. It's a bit of a shame that in the craft beer world, all of the attention in recent times really has gone to the IPAs and the Imperial Stouts and stuff. These lager beers, I think, if they're quite technically difficult to brew, and if you can brew a good Pilsner, a good Helles, Dunkel, Schwarzbier, Doppelbock, Märzen, whatever, you know, these beers are very, very good. So yeah, this one's got a lovely kind of almost crisp drinkability to it. It's really beautifully done. So yeah, let's try and break down the flavour of this one then. So straight away, across the middle of the palate, you get that lovely bready quality that just forms the backbone of the beer. And you really get a balance between this one. It's got a nice kind of almost wholemeal brown bready quality, but you also get a few elements of white bread in this too. And towards the back of the palate, I think there's a little bit more of a kind of slightly toasty bread crusty note to this beer. And I think it does get sweeter and sweeter the further that you go into the aftertaste as well. So that's kind of interesting about this one. So yeah, nice kind of brown bready base to the beer, that forms the backbone of it. You do, in the middle of the palate, in the middle third of your tongue, you do get more of a kind of white bready quality sitting in there as well. But like I say, as you move further towards the back of the palate, I think that the breadiness just becomes a little bit more toasty and bread crusty, if that makes sense. But regardless, it's that lovely kind of brown bready character that's forming the backbone of this one. It's obviously not as kind of thick and sweet and rye-like as you're going to get from a Dunkel, but it's kind of getting there, I have to say. This one is, compared to the other Märzens, I think this one is a little bit smoother and a bit more bready, but you do get a bit of that kind of graininess coming out of the beer as well. So I find this one a little bit more slightly brown bready than some of the other Märzens that I remember. But yeah, it's a lovely beer nonetheless, and this is, as I say, one of the things you always get between these 6 breweries. There's always different nuances as you go from brewery to brewery, and that's one of the great things about these beers. It really is. But yeah, so yeah, we've talked about the basic kind of backbone of the beer, but if you go into the back third of your palate, you can feel the breadiness is definitely a bit thicker there. You get more and more of that thicker kind of brown bready character there as you go towards the as you go towards the very back of the palate. That's when you get some of the more grainy elements of the beer, but it's actually got a really nice kind of smoothness to it on that back third of the tongue. But as you move further forward, that smooth brown bready character just kind of sits there, but as you move into the middle third of your palate, you can feel the thickness just goes down a little bit, and that's when you start to get some of the malty sweetness out of the beer. So like I said, in the middle third of your palate, you've got that kind of brown bready base, you've got a little bit of a kind of white bready character sitting on top of it, then you've got a little bit of a kind of oily sweetness to the beer. So in the very centre of that middle third of your palate, that's when you get the kind of straight up sweet caramel there, and as you move out from the centre of your palate there towards the extremities, to the edge of the palate, that's when you get that more kind of McVitie's digestive, biscuity sort of thing. They describe it on the bottle as honey. I can definitely see where they get that from, but to me it really reminds me of a sort of McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of thing. But in fairness, the oiliness that it has does maybe suit the word honey a little bit more. But yeah, a lovely bit of brown sugar there in the middle of the palate. As you go to the front corners of the palate and then move diagonally back, you do get a little bit of a kind of woody undertone to the beer as well. And some of the graininess, I think, comes out of this the further that you go into the aftertaste as well. I think more of the wholemealy side of the bready part of the beer really shows its head a little bit more in this one too. So that's definitely an interesting point to make about this beer. So yeah, this one for me, lovely malty smoothness to it, but the grainy qualities do show their head a little bit later on too. But yeah, I think we've described the malty side of this beer quite well on this so far. So let's focus on the hoppy side of things then. So yeah, hoppy side of things is kind of what you would expect if you're familiar with your German traditional beers. So in the back corners of the palate, you've got that lovely kind of quite smooth but also quite bright earthiness that you'd expect of Hallertau or Tettnanger German noble hops. As you move further forward, it does have a wee bit of herbal character, but this is where it's different from the aroma. In the aroma, it actually comes across as quite herbal, but very quickly, the earthiness, it spreads forward, but then it really kind of changes to be more kind of floral and aromatic going forward. And you do get quite a nice bright floral aromaticity on the front corners of the palate there. You do get a nice little bit of that bright floral aromaticity on the front corners of the palate there too, but then round the front curve of the tongue it's a little bit lighter and grassy. But again, the the nice grassiness that you get out of this one is very stereotypical of the German noble hops, and I think the green side of this beer for me, it leans a little bit more towards the grassy side of things, but the earthiness has a bit more prominence in it than you would expect from the aroma, I have to say. On the fruity side of things then, as I've always told you, the front third of your palate's where you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. And for me, this one, again, it's quite typical of what you'd expect. So yeah, for me, there is a little touch of a kind of there is a little touch of a slightly red fruity note to it, maybe a little bit of a fig. But yeah, if you go towards the back of the front third of your palate there, you'll feel the border between the middle third of your palate and the front third of your palate. There is a wee bit of a very slightly kind of slightly cakey type thing to this, but it's quite minimal. That you will get just a bit of an almost cakey sweetness, but as you move further in front of that, you really start to get some nice you do get a nice little bit of figgy sweetness there, but you can feel as you go further forward towards the tip of your tongue, it really gets more and more kind of peary for me. There's almost a little bit of a like sultana, like a dried kind of white green grape sort of thing coming out of this beer. You get that really nice kind of peary sultana type quality out of the beer, and as you reach the front kind of tip of your palate, you might get one or two little appley notes to it as well. But yeah, some people might think there is a wee touch of apricot in there as well. But yeah, it's got these. I think there is a little touch of fig to this one. I think there is a little bit. There is a little bit more of. You really do get more of a kind of peary and dried sultana grapey type note coming out of this one as you go further forward, and then just a little touch of appley note on the front kind of tip of your tongue. You might get a little wee bit of zestiness with the grassy notes on the very tip of your palate too. But yeah, pears, sultanas, and just a little touch of fig for me on the fruity side of this beer. I guess that's the thing that really distinguishes the Märzen from the Vienna lager as well, because the Vienna lager is a little bit more red and fruity, if that makes sense, and the brown sugars can also be a little bit more burnt at some points too, and maybe even a little bit more oily depending on what brewery you get the beer from. So yeah. The thing is with these lager beers, there's so many different types. You've got a lot of different derivatives. In Germany you have the Helles, which is the blonde lager. In the Czech Republic you've got the Svetli equivalent. Then you've got the Letzak in the Czech Republic, which is the more amber lager. And it's almost like a hybrid between the Märzen from Germany and the Vienna lagers from Austria. Then you've got the Dunkel in Germany, the kind of darker brown lager, which is the Cherny in the Czech Republic. Then you've got the Schwarzbier, the black lager, and the equivalent of that is the Tamavi. And then of course in Germany you've got Doppelbock, Maibock, and all these things, Märzens as well. I'm not sure what the connection between the Letzaks and the Märzens is, whether there is one, or whether the amber lagers, the Letzaks, are more related to the Vienna lagers, but there's lots of different types of lager beers anyway, and they all kind of originate in that sort of Central European area. So yeah, you can get little differences, but yeah, the Märzen is fairly similar to the Czech Letzak and also the Vienna lager as well. It's a nice kind of slightly caramelly leaning lager, but obviously not as big and bready and dark in its brown sugar character as the Dunkel would be. But regardless, this one's a very, very nice beer. It's a really nice kind of biscuity, bready leaning lager, this one. I like how the brown bread comes out in this a little bit more. I like that the kind of biscuity notes as well. So for me, the main leanings of this beer, it's quite grassy. It's got a little bit more of a prominent earthiness to it, nice kind of smooth brown bread, and also just a wee bit of that that kind of appley peary sort of thing that you would expect from this kind of Märzen style of beer. So yeah, again, very well done to Hacker-Pschorr for this one. I think they've pulled off a really, really solid beer with this, but it's not a surprise when these guys are one of the original Munich 6. So yeah, let's round off the review with the mouthfeel then. So yeah, for me, this beer, it's at the top end of light-bodied, bottom end of mid-bodied. The carbonation is very smooth. That's what you expect from one of these traditional German beers. For a lager beer, this is one of the more oily ones I think that you're going to come across, but when you do have a slightly higher malty presence in this, as you do with the Märzens and the Dunkels and stuff, you would expect the beer just to be that little bit more oily. So nothing surprising in that regard, but yeah, it feels very clean, this one. It does have that element of crispness to it as well that you would expect of the German lager beers. The Czech ones, of course, are a little bit kind of thicker and smoother, if that makes sense. You get more of a kind of smooth, bready character from the Czech lager varieties. But yeah, in terms of hoppy bitterness then, I think this one is a fairly standard, 20 IBUs. I think it's kind of sitting around that kind of level. The malt base, like I say, is very, very smooth. It gets a little bit drier and more grainy the further you go into the aftertaste, but there's also a really nice kind of sweetness to the beer as well, and then you've got a really nice, quite oily, juicy, fruity character out of this one. As I said earlier, the thing that distinguishes this from the other Märzens for me, slightly more prominent earthy character, nice little bit more of a graininess to the bready note. And then the fruits for me are quite oily in this one, and I like the brightness of the grassy character as well. You can feel a little bit of zestiness coming out of the grassiness as you go further into the aftertaste too. But yeah, I think that's a good place to kind of round off this review then. So yeah, it's been really fun to review this beer for you. Like I said, this was the last of the original Munich 6 Oktoberfest beers that I had to review for you here. This one is definitely a Märzen. It's not one of these fest beers like some of the other breweries are producing. So yeah, this one is a properly classic Märzen rather than the kind of more Helles type fest beer that you're getting from some of the other breweries. But yeah, it's a beautiful example of the style. If you get the chance to try this one, I highly recommend that you do. The Animator Doppelbock, the Dunkel, the Munich Helles, the beers that you get from Hacker-Pschorr, all of these ones I've reviewed already have been very, very nice. So I do need to see about reviewing the Pils and the Weizen for you at some point. And I don't know if they've got other varieties as well, but those are the two that stick in my mind that I have to review. I don't know if they have a Schwarzbier, actually. I don't know if any of the original 6 Munich breweries do Schwarzbiers actually, but that would be interesting if they did produce one of these at some point soon. But yeah, there's still a few beers to review from Hacker-Pschorr, so this definitely won't be the last time that you see these guys on the channel. But this is a nice way to round off my Oktoberfest reviews for you here on the channel. Maybe we can get all 6 of them together and do a special sometime. Maybe I can do that with my friend Daniel in Germany at some point. That would be a really nice live video to do. So yeah, we'll see about doing that at some point in the future. But yeah, for the meantime, let's round it off in this review. So this one was the Oktoberfest Märzen, coming in at 5.8% ABV from Hacker-Pschorr Bräu, part of the Paulaner Group based in Munich in Bavaria in Germany. I hope that you guys enjoyed this one. As always, let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Hacker-Pschorr. Do let me know some other Märzen beers that you'd like to see me review, and hopefully we can feature this style a little bit more on the channel in the future, because I feel this is one of the German styles we haven't covered too much actually, so we need to get that sorted over the next little while. But thank you again for watching. Check out my social media, have a go at some of the Hacker-Pschorr beers if you haven't already, and you will see these guys again on the channel at some point. Fingers crossed, hopefully quite soon. But yeah, until the next time, Slanger just now, happy Oktoberfest, stay safe and make sure you get through this whole COVID-19 thing, and hopefully in 2021 Oktoberfest is back up and running. Thanks again for watching, I'll catch you guys later. Slanger, skål, cheers, make sure you have a go at the Oktoberfest Märzen from Hacker-Pschorr Bräu in Munich in Bayern in Germany. Slanger, skål, cheers, Prost.